I wanted to talk to you about fatigue, and to me, it's like the idea of fatigue feeds into like everything that we're going to be talking about tonight. There's much debate also, like what does fatigue even mean? Do we actually need to rest players? A lot of, I think me included, we feel like a lot of these human beings just look tired. It's visible. You can see the fatigue. Ancelotti himself says when they're tired, they won't play. That's it. We don't need to discuss this any further. This is why Modric, Casemiro, Kroos started this game again. And this, like, again, fatigue ties into everything for me. I'm going to pull up, see if I can do a quick share screen here. And I promise this is related, even though it doesn't seem like it's going to be related. So share screen. I just want to show the XG chart really quick. And the reason I'm showing that is because, to me, like, how do we explain the difference in the first half and the second half? There's a couple of explanations. One is that, well, Athletic played a higher line. They decided to get out of their defensive shell a little bit, and they started to create. And look, they are a good team. They're probably underrated with their creative aspect when they want to be. They've created an incredible amount of chances this season, but they just can't finish. And I was looking at the second half, and just before the final whistle, I was thinking to myself, man, if I had to guess what the XG chart is going to look like at the end of this, I would guess that there will be a huge spike after, like, let's say minute 65. And, like, I didn't expect it to be this dramatic. So, like, Athletic is the yellow line. So right around here, 59th minute, it just spikes. And it spikes, and it spikes, and it spikes, and it spikes. And they somehow leave this game with 0 goals from an XG of 2.0. And you look at this from, like, this is a crazy, crazy cluster. Like, you got Danny Garcia, shot point blank, that's blocked. And I'd have to go back and look to see who blocked what. We all saw the game. We saw the Vasquez one, Militao one, Fede had one, Courtois save. So this one blocked. You had Sunset. This is the one where I think he beats Casemiro first, and then Alaba comes to cover. He gets roasted, and then Courtois saves. This one, point blank, Unai Nunez, set piece. Surprise, surprise. That one is
that was maybe the worst miss of them all, where he just doesn't really connect. And you think, one of the kind of concerns you maybe had coming into this game was Unai Nunez having to play. He's their fourth choice centre back. Inigo Martinez is suspended. I wondered if Athletic would miss him in defence. Not really in defence, but if Inigo Martinez is getting his head on that set piece, that's a goal. Unai Nunez just doesn't really know what to do and hits it even further wide than it was going.
Yeah, so that one went wide, right? So
that was the worst one.
Yeah, or if Raul Garcia maybe gets on the end of that. But look, Raul Garcia, speaking of him, 26-minute header saved, point blank. Another one, header blocked, 84th minute by Mikel Vesca. So anyways, the point is, I don't know what was happening in the second half. All I know was that, again, a tsunami was just coming at us, and we were just trying to stay alive. And again, this goes back to, like, tactics almost went out the window. Defensive structure just did not exist. We were melting, but we were just coming up with these heroic things. So, fatigue. How much of this to you is fatigue? And how much of this was just bad tactics and Athletic going to another level? And by the way, just before I forget to mention, 2.7 XG, that's the highest that Real Madrid have allowed this season from any opponent.
Yeah. I mean, to explain the XG question is basically that Athletic are just absolutely terrible with their finishing. Their difference between XG this season and actual goals scored is 10. They have 13 goals scored, 23 XG. That's the biggest difference by far in La Liga. They don't have any finishers. They don't have a striker. They have Iñaki Williams, whose finishing is terrible, and they have Raul Garcia, who's getting older and older, and they don't have a striker. They have Villa Libre, who comes and plays an hour, gets injured, goes off. They don't have a striker. So that's part of the explanation of why Real Madrid weren't punished the way they probably should have been. In terms of explaining why they gave up all those chances, I mean, half of the ones that you just outlined there were set pieces, and we kind of already touched on that. They've lost a lot of confidence, I'd say. They're second-guessing themselves now in a way they weren't before the Sevilla corner kick. A lot of it is the substitutions. I mean, when Fede Valverde comes on, you think, right, this is going to help Real Madrid see out this game. It almost didn't. I think that maybe says more about the Athletic substitutions than the Real Madrid ones, because with every player Athletic put on, they had more creative force. Honestly, I think Marcelino got the Athletic lineup a little bit wrong in this one. I mean, some of the players that came off the bench, considering their form the last few weeks, probably should have started this one. So when they come on, they're only a goal down. They're at the Bernabeu. They're going to play out their skins. Athletic aren't playing every midweek. Even specifically coming into this game, Atletic's last match was on Friday night. Real Madrid's last match was on Sunday. They have so much more energy. So it is partly fatigue, I think, and especially in the midfield, it's Modric, Casemiro, Kroos, I think, are the ones that feel fatigued the most, and that right now I'm quite surprised that they started this game again, because the one against Sevilla wasn't great at all, and they're not going to be any fresher by the time this one comes around, especially Modric and Kroos.
I did think, and I mean, we're kind of jumping all over the place a little bit here. I thought before we get too much into the doom and gloom of the second half and all that, which we've already done so, but we didn't even get a chance to talk about the goal, which I thought was absolutely beautiful. And I will share that one as well. And I think, like, when we're talking about basically like the theme of the first half, and I don't know what's going on with this share screen. There we go. When we're talking about the theme of the first half and, like, you know, how Real Madrid were playing, I thought no better sequence actually illustrated this in this goal, because when
there are so many aspects on this goal, and the first thing from where I was in the stadium, you can sort of see it at the bottom of the screen, but the first thing I saw about this goal was how open Lucas Vazquez was. You saw it, everybody in the stadium saw it, and Casemiro decides, you know what, Lucas Vazquez is wide open. I'm going to go to Vinicius, who's not so open, because we go down the left at, like, you know, first read, second read, third read, as we go down the left to Vinicius. And then he cuts inside in a way that he maybe doesn't always do, and it's just really nice link-up play, even a new kind of assist from Modric. I don't think we've seen that. Dummy, terribly missed shot, resulting in an assist. But yeah, it's really nice play. And, you know, the Asensio aspect, we'll get onto that maybe a little bit later. But the fact that Asensio so central was another key takeaway from me for this one. This was the first time that Asensio and Lucas were playing together this season. The first time they started together. They hadn't started on the right flank yet. And I was interested to see how that would go, because Ancelotti's spoken a lot about the right wing this season, and how he would change the way they play on the right depending on the personnel. So I wasn't sure what kind of combination Lucas and Asensio would produce. What it produced was Lucas being very wide and Asensio drifting in all the time, and that's how this goal happens. Asensio drifts in, and if you look, when he actually takes the shot that leads to the rebound, he's inside the D right there. I mean, that's how central Asensio is, considering he's supposed to be the right winger in this game. So that was, so many aspects in this goal. A really interesting one that summed up a lot of the kind of tactical aspects of that first half.
Yeah, I think it's also interesting too. One of the themes we've been talking about the past few games is like the interchangeability of Alaba and Mendy, which you also saw here. You know, the vertical outlet that Alaba, you know, he provided but never got the ball, but that also created space for Vinicius to cut in from the right. You know, Alaba dragged some defenders with him, and you know, this is, little did we know this was like the last thing we would cheer about in this game, apart from some heroic blocks in the second half. But like, you know, we can also talk about Vinicius just for the fact that he had one of the indicators of how dramatically different the first and second halves were. Vinicius had 5 key passes in this game, and all of them came in the first half. And just because Real Madrid couldn't get any control in the second half, Vinicius didn't get much of the ball, although he had those 2 brilliant moments in the second half, which I might as well bring up here. I think my computer's lagging a little bit because this Who Scored tab is open, and Who Scored is basically just the disease of all websites. But like, you know, we posted this today too. Also, the second half, you know, this is not a performance where you kind of look at Vinicius and this was like a Vinicius game. But, you know, it should be noted that a quiet game for Vinicius, which was this one, would also be like a pretty good game for someone else. You know, he had 5 key passes. He had 5 completed tackles, which was a game high, by the way. In the second half, where we didn't see much of him, he had moments like this, where just like the body language, the confidence to pull stuff like this off has been really, really awesome. And, you know, that was the dummy. This one is the little wizardry where he cuts past and then does this flick to Benzema. So he had moments like that as well. But yeah, so the first half kind of like it ended on a really, really high note. I think we were all happy. We had some concerns about the defensive side of things. My feeling was like, look, Athletic are going to start chasing this game and things will open up. And, whatever defensive issues we had in the first half, we'll figure out in the second half. We'll be tested a little bit, but we'll also have more space for Vinicius. If Rodrigo comes off the bench, then great. Camavinga can get to his spots. Fede can be, getting to his spots. So we'll be fine. But little did I know that Athletic were just going to put their foot on our necks and just not let us escape our half. So that part of it was definitely a little bit surprising to me. I also feel like, I don't know how you feel, but don't you think Ancelotti's pre and post game comments are a little bit contradictory in the sense where before this game he was saying things like, we don't need to rotate, and who am I to argue with Ancelotti, who's one of the greatest managers of all time? He's won the Champions League, 3 times with 3 separate clubs or something like that. And, he's got an incredible resume, incredible tactical acumen, manager, highly more qualified than I am, infinitely more qualified than I am. But I also look at this and I'm saying like, well, you said those same things in your last Real Madrid tenure that, we'll rotate when we need to rotate. And the team got burnt out in the springtime. Now, like, to be fair, that team was designed horribly, and, Ancelotti didn't have many midfielders to choose from, so he had to play Kroos a lot, he had to play Modric a lot. But back then, he had a younger version of Kroos and Modric. He also had Iaramendi instead of Fede and Camavinga, and Fede and Camavinga are way better than Iaramendi was at that stage of his career. So you just have more excuses to rotate now. You have really good young players who are energetic, who understand the game, and you have older versions of Modric and Kroos. So I feel like, if anything, you should be rotating more now. And I'll also say this. While it may not be entirely visible now, and we can say they're fine now, I'm really more worried about March, April. Will we see it then? So, and then in the post-game today, he says a lot of the theme was, and you're the post-game master. So tell me what stood out to you. But he said one of the recurring themes in the Ancelotti press conference today was, we suffered. We had little rest in between games. Athletic had more rest than us. And mind you, this was a rescheduled game because Real Madrid wanted more rest after the South American international break. So maybe it worked out a little bit better for them. But we had little rest in between games and we were tired. And so that to me kind of just conflicts a little bit with what he was saying before the game. How do you feel about that?
No, absolutely. After the Sevilla game in the post-match press conference, he said, "Yeah, maybe I'll rotate in the next game." Then the pre-match one, like you said, he said, "Yeah, I'm going to only rotate when players are tired." So it's hard to know from his comments what his plans are for rotation, but it's easy to see from his actions what his plans are. His plans are, I'm going to play the best available 11 within reason. For example, tonight, the players from the starting lineup who didn't play were, his ideal starting lineup were Rodrigo and Carvajal. Carvajal's an obvious one. He's not injured, but he's, Carvajal, and he breaks down if he plays too much. So that's the kind of one where that's maybe the example of what Ancelotti's saying of, when they're tired, I will rest them. Carvajal was probably tired. Rodrigo too has just been coming back from an injury. Then he just names the rest of his starting lineup. So I don't know. I think he's in a bit of a difficult situation as well, because right now, as we've outlined, the next few weeks are just killer in terms of the fixtures, many in a row, and against such quality opposition. So it's a very difficult month to rotate in. January is a perfect month to rotate in because it's Copa del Rey, and you can just put out your B team every week. And if you go far, you do. If you don't, it doesn't matter so much. So January will bring time to rest. This Christmas, there is actually a bit of a break as well. Real Madrid have a game, I think, on the 22nd, and then the next game is on the 2nd of January. So they have a proper rest there as well at the end of the month. Then they have a January with Copa del Rey. So I think there will be time to rotate. But actually, I don't believe Ancelotti's looking ahead thinking, right, I'll rotate at the end of December and January, and this is why I'm playing everyone now. I think he's just thinking the next game. If he came out as a coach and explained, look, I'm going to play these guys the next few weeks intensely, and then in January give them a rest, then great. But I don't know. I think that's what will end up happening. But I don't think there's much planning to it. which is a worry because that's very similar to last time. But at least with the new format of the Copa del Rey, at least with actually having the Christmas break, there is going to be some time to rest after this run of early December fixtures.
I can't wait for Christmas break because it's like there's not even international break games, right? Nothing.
No, next international breaks in March.
I don't even remember what that looks like. I don't even remember whether
because last year, of course, there was no Christmas break because there were so many games to cram in for COVID. So yeah, I mean, there's like a full 10 or 11 days off this time around.
Well, so part of the issue is that, like, I'm not a sports scientist, so like I can't claim to say like these players are tired de facto. It's 100%. You have to rest them. Modric has the point of view where he said in the past that for me, I have to play. The more I play, the more in shape I'll be. He doesn't like the rest, and so there's that point of view as well. I guess what I'll say is, to me, there's like another side of this coin is that, are you really playing your best 11? So what Ancelotti said before this game, he said, and the quote was, quote, "I don't like to rotate just for the sake of rotating." Okay, so that means you have your best 11 and you always want to play that way. I'm just not sure, like, do we have...
But that basically means I don't like to rotate. Like, what, like, why are you rotating if not for the sake of rotating? That's, like, inherent in the word. Like, if, that's the point, is you rotate to rotate. Like, so he's obviously just not a fan of rotating. That's fine, but, when you have a squad
getting very philosophical.
Yeah, a little bit. We can get into
rotate for the sake of rotate. Got it.
Well, but I mean, look at the squad that he has now compared to the one that got burnt out, like you mentioned, 5 or 6 years ago. This is an even older squad than that one was. So you need to be even more careful. I mean, that year, I think it was Modric ended up injured and burnt out. That was a Modric who's like 6 years younger than he is now. Like, you need to look after these guys because, you'll get to the point where they do burn out or pick up injuries from having played too much. I mean, just look at some of the players that are suffering injuries, still feeling the effects of last season.
Well, the other thing is that when you say, I don't like to rotate just for the sake of rotating, to me that implies that you want to play with your quote-unquote best 11, that he believes this is his best team. And so I'm just not sure if that's true. That's where I'm questioning it. I'm just questioning, like, do we really get a huge drop-off when Camavinga and Fede are on the field as opposed to one of those midfielders? And if the answer is no, then why not keep the legs fresh and let more people get rhythm? Because the problem is when you say, I don't like to rotate for the sake of rotating, it also means that you're discounting the idea of rhythm and momentum in a player's... Because if all of a sudden the starters get burnt out, and you find yourself in a situation where you have to put these bench players in, and they're just cold, they don't have the momentum to fill in, then that's a problem to me. Like, you need to sustain, you need to establish rhythm. If God forbid something happens to Karim Benzema, we have our backup striker right now is basically on the completely outcasted and has no time to work his way into some kind of rhythm or momentum. So those are the issues, and I get both sides. I'm not saying it's necessarily one or the other, or what's right or what's wrong, but I'm just saying these are the barriers, these are the issues that we're going to face, and we have faced in the past. And by the way, a very young player in Pedri, we saw how this went down with him. He was like, wow, Iron Man, young player, he's fit, he can handle it, put the burden on him, and when was the last time he played? I think he almost came back, then he got relapsed again. So even young players are not immune to getting burnt out. The other thing is, Ancelotti is the flag bearer publicly of, like, we play too much football. Cut down the calendar. So I feel like if he's the one who's talking about that publicly, then at least give your players an opportunity to rest, because they're not going to rest in the international break also. So it's just like a lot of conflicting messages to me, and I don't know if he's necessarily...
It's fine to want, a shorter calendar or whatever, but the calendar is what it is for the next few years. It's set in stone, so you have to work with that. And yeah, he's said before that there's 2 reasons to rotate. He explained this in a press conference earlier this season. There's 2 reasons to rotate. One, he said, is to rest players. The other is to give opportunities. And like you say, he didn't say in this word, but like you're saying, the rhythm to the players who'll be coming in. That's all great, but he's not doing that. It's he says a lot in press conferences about rotating, and I love his press conferences, by the way, because he goes down some deep dives on certain issues. But when it comes to rotating, he's saying one thing in the press conference, and his actions in reality are completely different. So, you know, he can say all the right things. He can change his mind in press conferences. What matters is a team sheet, and it's pretty much the same team sheet, 4-3-3, more or less the same 11 players, one or two changes each game, if that. And that's been the case for the last few weeks. I'm sure it will be for the next couple of weeks against Real Sociedad, Inter, and Atletico.